The Whispering Stones. Our third and final story for this part of the night takes us to the vast, ancient forests of Maine. It comes from an experienced outdoorsman and amateur historian named Sarah, who recounted her unsettling discovery on a local online forum. She had always been fascinated by forgotten places and the echoes of the past that linger in the land, drawn to the silent stories held within the earth itself. Sarah was exploring a particularly remote section of state forest, far from any marked trails, miles from any sign of civilization. She was using old, detailed topographical maps, cross-referencing them with historical records, looking for signs of forgotten settlements, lost logging camps, or even older, more mysterious sites that had been swallowed back by the wilderness. She loved the silence, the feeling of stepping back in time, of being a lone witness to history. She had been hiking for hours, pushing through dense pine forests, the needles soft underfoot, the air thick with the scent of resin and damp earth, when she stumbled upon something truly unexpected. A clearing, far too symmetrical to be natural, almost perfectly circular, surrounded by trees that seemed unusually tall and old, their branches interwoven like ancient guardians, forming a dark, impenetrable wall. And in the center of this clearing, she saw them, a circle of stones. They weren't just random rocks. These were clearly placed, large, smooth, and oddly shaped, some standing upright like crude monoliths, others lying flat, forming a perfect circle about 15 feet in diameter. They seemed ancient, partially covered in thick, velvety moss and crusty lichen, as if they had been there for centuries, perhaps millennia. There were no signs of a camp, no modern debris, no telltale signs of recent human activity. This was something else entirely, something deliberate and deeply archaic. Sarah, intrigued by the discovery, pulled out her camera, her historian's curiosity overriding her initial unease. She walked slowly around the stone circle, admiring the primitive arrangement, the sheer effort it must have taken to place such massive rocks. The air within the circle felt different, thicker, still. It was unnaturally quiet, almost dead. She noticed that the ambient sounds of the forest, the distant rustle of leaves, the chirping of birds, the buzzing of insects, seemed muffled here, as if the sound itself was being absorbed by the strange, still air, creating a pocket of profound silence. As she was about to step inside the circle for a closer look, a sudden piercing chill ran down her spine. It wasn't the temperature. The air was mild. It was a profound, instinctual warning, a cold dread that seeped into her bones. A voice, not in her ears, but directly in her mind, a clear, insistent thought, whispered, "Don't." She stopped, hand hovering over the threshold of the stones, her foot poised to cross the invisible boundary. She shook her head, trying to dislodge the feeling. It must be her imagination, an echo of all the ghost stories and ancient legend. She decided to respect the feeling, a deep-seated survival instinct kicking in, and remained outside the circle. She took several photos, trying to capture the eerie stillness of the place, the strange light that seemed to fall differently within its bounds. As she was focusing her lens on one particularly tall, pointed stone, its surface scarred by time, she heard it, a faint whisper. It seemed to come from the stones themselves, a multitude of hushed voices, like dry leaves rustling in a breeze, or distant wind chimes, but distinctly articulate. She couldn't make out individual words, but the sound was undeniably there, rising and falling, a low, continuous murmur, a chorus of unseen entities. And it was coming from inside the circle, emanating from the very ground, from the very stones. Her heart began to pound, a frantic drum against her ribs. She lowered her camera, her eyes wide, scanning the interior of the circle. Nothing. No wind. Nothing moving. Just the ancient stones and the strange, thick air. Yet the whispering persisted, growing slightly louder, a chilling symphony of unseen voices, a cacophony of hushed secrets. It sounded mournful, like a collective lament, a deep, ancient sorrow. And then at times, almost angry, a low, simmering rage. And occasionally, she thought she could discern a single distinct word. A name, perhaps, or a plea, or a warning. But it was always swallowed by the collective murmur before she could fully grasp it. Like trying to catch smoke, she felt a powerful, almost irresistible urge to step inside, to get closer, to try and understand what the stones were whispering, to decipher the ancient language of the place. It was like an invisible hand was pulling her, a dark curiosity that overshadowed her fear, a siren song for the historian within her. She took one step forward, her hand reaching out towards the nearest stone, compelled by an unholy fascination. The whispering intensified dramatically. It no longer sounded like a murmur. It became a frantic, desperate chorus of voices, swirling around her, seeming to pull at her clothes, at her very being, a whirlwind of sound and unseen force. The air grew cold, heavy, and charged with a terrifying energy. And then she heard it clearly. One word, spoken by many voices in unison, a guttural, ancient sound that vibrated through her very bones, a sound that was both a command and a desperate plea. Join us. Sarah recoiled as if struck by a physical blow. The feeling of malevolence, of ancient, trapped things, of something unspeakably hungry, was overwhelming. This wasn't a place of peace or ancient wisdom. It was a prison, or a trap. A place where something had been bound, or was waiting to bind others. She stumbled backward, tripping over a root, her legs suddenly weak. The whispering shrieked, a cacophony of sound that seemed to tear at the fabric of the air around her, a chorus of agony and demand. She scrambled to her feet, dropping her camera bag, not caring about the expensive equipment, and ran. She didn't look back. She just ran, blindly, frantically, through the dense forest, crashing through undergrowth, until her lungs burned, and the terrifying sounds of the whispering stones faded behind her, replaced only by the thumping of her own heart. She ran for what felt like miles, not caring about her direction, only about putting as much distance as possible between herself and that terrifying circle. When she finally stopped, gasping, leaning against a tree, she was completely disoriented, lost in a part of the forest she didn't recognize. She spent the rest of the day and night, lost, shivering, tormented by the memory of the voices, the chilling command, until she finally stumbled upon a fire road the next morning. Exhausted and traumatized, Sarah never went back for her camera bag. She says the thought of returning to that clearing, to those whispering stones, fills her with a dread that chills her to her very core, a primal fear that has never left her. She often wonders what would have happened if she had stepped inside. What did those voices want? What secrets did those ancient stones hold? And what unspeakable rituals had been performed there? And what exactly did join us truly mean? She knows, deep down, she narrowly escaped a fate worse than death.